Marcus Williams walked slowly down the busy street. His old coat was too big for him now. He had lost weight in the past few months, his shoes had holes in them, and his feet were cold. It was winter, and the wind was strong. He had not eaten a real meal in 3 days. His stomach hurt from being empty. He had tried to find work, but no one would hire him. People looked at him and saw a homeless man. They did not see who he used to be. Marcus stopped in front of a fancy restaurant. Through the big windows, he could see people eating expensive food. They were laughing and talking. Their clothes were clean and new. They looked warm and happy. In the corner of the restaurant, Marcus saw something that made his heart beat faster. There was a beautiful black piano. It was shiny and new. No one was playing it, it just sat there waiting. Marcus remembered when he used to play piano. That was a long time ago, before everything went wrong. Before he lost everything that mattered to him. Now he lived on the streets, and most days he tried not to think about music, but today was different. Today he was so hungry that he was ready to try anything. He looked at the piano again. Maybe, just maybe, he could play for some food. Marcus walked to the restaurant door. His hands were shaking, but not from the cold. He was nervous. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The restaurant was warm inside. It smelled like good food. Marcus heard the sounds of people talking and eating. Soft music was playing from speakers in the ceiling, but it was not piano music. A man in a nice suit walked up to Marcus. This was the restaurant manager. His name, Mr. Peterson. He looked at Marcus from head to toe. His face showed that he did not like what he saw. "Excuse me," Mr. Peterson said in a cold voice. "I think you are in the wrong place. This is a private restaurant." Marcus felt his face get hot. He knew he looked bad. His clothes were old and dirty. His hair was long and messy. He had not shaved in many days. "Please," Marcus said quietly. "I just want to ask you something." Mr. Peterson crossed his arms. "What do you want? We don't give money to people on the street." "I don't want money," Marcus said. He pointed to the piano in the corner. "I want to know if I can play that piano, just for a little food. I am very hungry." Mr. Peterson stared at Marcus for a moment. Then he started to laugh. It was not a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that hurt people's feelings. "You?" Mr. Peterson said loudly. "You want to play our piano?" Other people in the restaurant started to look at them. Marcus felt many eyes watching him. His face got even hotter. "Yes," Marcus said. "I can play piano. I used to be a professional musician." This made Mr. Peterson laugh even harder. "A professional musician? Look at yourself, you live on the street." Some customers started to whisper to each other. A few people took out their phones. They thought something funny was about to happen. "Sir," Marcus said, trying to stay calm. "I know I don't look good, but I really can play piano. Just give me one chance. If you don't like what you hear, I will leave right away." Mr. Peterson looked around the restaurant. He saw that people were watching and listening. He liked being the center of attention. He thought this would be entertaining for his customers. "You know what?" Mr. Peterson said with a big smile. "This is going to be fun. Everyone," he called out to the whole restaurant, "we have a special show today. This gentleman thinks he can play our $50,000 piano." More people stopped, eating to watch. Some were smiling. Others looked uncomfortable. Marcus felt like he was standing on a stage, but not the good kind of stage he used to know. "What's your name?" Mr. Peterson asked. "Marcus," he said softly. "Well, Marcus," Mr. Peterson said loudly, "let's see what you can do. But I'm warning you, if you damage our piano, you will be in big trouble." Marcus nodded. He understood. He looked at the piano again. It was beautiful. It reminded him of the pianos he used to play when his life was different. He started walking toward the piano. Each step felt heavy. People were watching him and whispering. He heard someone say, "This should be good." Another person said, "I feel bad for him." Marcus reached the piano bench. It was made of soft leather. He had not sat on anything so nice in a long time. He touched the piano lid gently. The wood was smooth and perfect. He lifted the lid to show the keys. They were white and black, just like every piano. But these keys looked special. They were clean and bright. Marcus could see his reflection in them. He sat down on the bench. It was the right height. His feet could reach the pedals. Everything felt familiar, like coming home. After a long trip, Marcus put his hands over the keys, but he did not touch them yet. He closed his eyes and tried to remember. Music had been his whole life once. It had been as natural as breathing. The restaurant was getting quieter. People were waiting to see what would happen. Some thought he would play badly. Others wondered if he really could play at all. Mr. Peterson stood with his arms crossed, still smiling. He was sure this homeless man would embarrass himself. Then everyone would laugh, and it would be a funny story to tell later. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the keys. His hands were dirty and rough from living on the streets. But underneath the dirt, they were still the same hands that used to make beautiful music. He took one more deep breath. Then he placed his fingers on the keys. The restaurant became completely quiet. Everyone was watching. Even the servers stopped working. This was the moment that would change everything. Marcus pressed down on the first key. The first note came out soft and clear. It was a simple note, but it was perfect. Marcus pressed another key, then another. The sounds were beautiful. But Mr. Peterson was not impressed yet. He was still waiting for Marcus to make a mistake. He wanted to laugh at him some more. "Come on," Mr. Peterson said loudly. "Play something real. Show us what a professional can do." Marcus heard the challenge in his voice. He also heard people whispering behind him. Some were saying mean things. Others sounded curious. A woman at table 5 said to her friend, "He actually sounds okay so far." Her friend replied, "Wait until he tries to play something hard. Then, we'll see." A man near the window was holding up his phone, recording everything. He was smiling like he was watching a funny video. "This is going to be great for social media," he whispered to his wife. Marcus tried to ignore all the voices. He focused on the piano keys. Music had always been his safe place. Even when life was hard, music made everything better. He started to play a simple song. It was Für Elise by Beethoven. Most people knew this song. It was not too hard, but it was beautiful when played well. Marcus's fingers moved across the keys with ease. The music filled the restaurant. It was much better than the recorded music that had been playing from the speakers. Some people stopped talking to listen. The song was pretty, and Marcus was playing it perfectly. But Mr. Peterson was not happy. This was not going the way he wanted. "Anyone can play that simple song," Mr. Peterson said loudly. "My 8-year-old niece can play that. Play something difficult." Marcus felt the sting of those words. But he kept playing. He finished Für Elise with a gentle ending. A few people clapped softly. "That was nice," said an old lady at table 3. She reminded Marcus of his piano teacher from long ago. But Mr. Peterson was not finished. He walked closer to the piano. "Look, everyone," he announced to the whole restaurant. "Our street musician can play a beginner song. Let's give him a hand." He clapped slowly and loudly, but it was not real clapping. It was the kind of clapping people do when they are making fun of someone. Some customers looked uncomfortable. They did not like seeing someone being treated badly. But others joined in the fake clapping. They thought it was funny. "Play something harder," someone shouted from the back of the restaurant. "Yeah," said another voice. "Show us why you're a professional." Marcus felt his heart beating fast. He was embarrassed and hurt, but he was also getting angry. These people thought he was just a homeless man who was pretending to play piano. They did not know who he really was. They did not know what he had lost. They did not know that music had once been his whole world. Marcus looked down at his hands. They were still on the piano keys. These hands had once played in big concert halls. These hands had made thousands of people happy with beautiful music. "Okay," Marcus said quietly. "You want something harder?" Mr. Peterson grinned. Yes. Show us what you've got. Marcus thought about what to play. He could play many difficult songs. He had learned hundreds of pieces over the years. But which one should he choose? Then he remembered a piece that had always been special to him. It was Chopin's Ballade No. 1. This was not a beginner song. This was one of the hardest pieces any pianist could play. It required years of training and practice. Marcus had played this piece many times in his old life. It had been one of his favorites, but he had not played it in 3 years. Not since everything went wrong. I will play Chopin's Ballade No. 1, Marcus announced. A few people in the restaurant knew what this meant. One man nearly choked on his drink. Did he just say Chopin's Ballade No. 1? He whispered to his wife. His wife shrugged. Is that hard? Hard, the man said. It's one of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. Mr. Peterson had no idea what Marcus had just said. He did not know much about classical music. Fine, he said, play your fancy song, but when you mess up, you have to leave right away. Marcus nodded. And if I play it well? Mr. Peterson laughed. If you play it well, I'll give you a free meal and apologize in front of everyone here. The restaurant got quiet again. This sounded like a real challenge now. People put down their forks and turned to watch. Marcus positioned his hands over the keys. This piece started very softly, almost like a whisper. Then it grew bigger and more powerful. It had fast parts and slow parts. It had gentle parts and dramatic parts. It was like telling a whole story with just piano music. The story had love and loss, hope and sadness, dreams and reality. Marcus closed his eyes. He tried to forget about all the people watching him. He tried to forget about being hungry and cold and homeless. He tried to remember the feeling he used to have when he played music. Slowly, the feeling started to come back. Music was still inside him. It had been hiding, but it was still there. Marcus took a deep breath. Then he began to play. The first notes were so soft that people had to lean forward to hear them. But they were perfect notes. They were exactly the way Chopin had written them more than 100 years ago. Marcus's fingers moved like they were dancing. The music started to fill the restaurant. It was not like the simple song he had played before. This was real classical music, played by someone who truly understood it. People stopped talking completely. Even Mr. Peterson stopped smiling. Something special was happening and everyone could feel it. The music grew louder and more complex. Marcus's hands moved faster across the keys. His whole body was involved in playing. He swayed gently with the rhythm. A woman at table 7 started to cry. The music was so beautiful that it touched her heart. She had never heard anything like this in person before. The man who had been recording with his phone slowly lowered it. He forgot about social media. He just wanted to listen to the music. Marcus played on, lost in the world of sound he was creating. For these few minutes, he was not a homeless man begging for food. He was what he had always been deep inside, a true musician. Marcus's fingers danced across the piano keys like they had a life of their own. The music filled every corner of the restaurant. It was not just sound anymore. It was magic. The Chopin piece had many different parts. Right now, Marcus was playing the gentle section. His touch was so light that the notes seemed to float in the air. Each note was clear and perfect. People in the restaurant had completely forgotten about their food. A businessman who had been talking loudly on his phone had hung up. A mother, who was feeding her baby, had stopped with the spoon halfway to the child's mouth. Even the kitchen staff had come out to listen. The cooks and dishwashers stood in the doorway, their work forgotten. They had never heard live classical music like this before. Mr. Peterson stood frozen next to table 4. His mouth was slightly open. The confident smile had disappeared from his face. He was starting to realize that something very unusual was happening. Marcus moved into the faster section of the piece. His hands flew across the keys with incredible speed. But even though he was playing fast, every note was exactly right. Not one mistake, not one wrong sound. The music told a story without words. It spoke of joy and sorrow, of dreams and broken hearts. Marcus put all of his own pain into the music. 3 years of living on the streets. 3 years of trying to forget his old life. All of that hurt came out through his fingers. But there was also hope in the music. There was beauty. There was the memory of better times. An elderly woman at table 8 was crying openly now. She was a retired music teacher, and she recognized true talent when she heard it. She had taught piano for 40 years, but she had never heard anyone play this piece so beautifully. Her husband handed her a tissue. "That's incredible," he whispered. "Who is this man?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know. But he's not just any street musician. This is someone very special." A young couple at table 2 was recording with their phones, but not to make fun anymore. They wanted to capture this moment because they knew they might never hear anything like it again. Marcus reached the most difficult part of the piece. This section had notes that jumped all over the piano. His left hand played deep, powerful sounds while his right hand played quick, light melodies. It was like listening to 2 different instruments at the same time. But Marcus made it look easy. His body moved with the music. His face showed the emotions he was feeling. Sometimes he looked peaceful. Sometimes he looked sad. Sometimes he looked like he was remembering something wonderful from long ago. The restaurant was completely silent except for the piano music. Even the baby had stopped crying and was staring at Marcus with wide eyes. Mr. Peterson slowly sat down, in an empty chair. He was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. This was not a homeless man pretending to play piano. This was a real musician. Maybe even a great musician. Marcus played the dramatic climax of the piece. The music was loud and powerful now. It filled the restaurant and seemed to shake the walls. His whole body was involved in creating the sound. Then, suddenly, the music became soft again. This was the ending section. Marcus played it with such gentleness that it sounded like a lullaby. The notes grew quieter and quieter. A server named Maria had tears running down her cheeks. She had grown up listening to her grandmother play piano, and this music reminded her of those happy times. The cook, a big man named Tony, stood with his hands pressed together like he was praying. He had never been interested in classical music before, but this was different. This touched something deep inside him. Marcus approached the final notes of the piece. These last few sounds had to be perfect. They had to bring the whole story to a peaceful end. He played the final chord so softly that it seemed to disappear into the air like a whisper. Then he lifted his hands from the keys. The restaurant was completely quiet. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Marcus sat very still on the piano bench. His eyes were still closed. He had forgotten where he was. For those few minutes he had been back in his old world. The world where music was everything. Slowly, he opened his eyes and remembered. He was in a restaurant wearing dirty clothes, asking for food. The magic moment was over. He turned around to face the people in the restaurant. They were all staring at him. But their faces had changed. Before, some had looked amused or bored or even mean. Now they all looked amazed. The silence stretched on. Marcus wondered if he had done something wrong. Maybe they had not liked the music after all. Then suddenly, one person started clapping. It was the elderly woman who used to teach piano. She was clapping slowly and steadily with tears still on her face. Another person joined in. Then another. Soon everyone in the restaurant was clapping. But this was not the fake mean clapping from before. This was real appreciation. This was respect. The clapping grew louder and louder. People started standing up. Soon, everyone in the restaurant was on their feet, giving Marcus a standing ovation. The businessman who had been on his phone was clapping and shaking his head in amazement. The young mother was bouncing her baby and clapping at the same time. Even the kitchen staff was clapping and cheering from the doorway. Marcus looked around at all the faces. He saw surprise, joy, and something else. He saw respect. These people were not looking at him like he was just a homeless man anymore. They were looking at him like he was an artist. Mr. Peterson stood up slowly. His face was red with embarrassment. He walked toward Marcus, but his confident walk from before was gone. Now he looked nervous and ashamed. The clapping started to quiet down as people sat back down, but they were still looking at Marcus with wonder. They were whispering to each other, asking questions. Where did he learn to play like that? How is someone that talented living on the streets? That was the most beautiful music I've ever heard. Marcus stood up from the piano bench. His legs felt a little shaky. Playing that piece had taken all of his energy, but it had also given him something back. It had reminded him of who he really was inside. Mr. Peterson reached the piano. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He held out his hand to shake Marcus's hand. "Sir," Mr. Peterson said quietly, "I owe you an apology." Marcus looked at Mr. Peterson's outstretched hand. A few minutes ago, this same man had been laughing at him and treating him badly. Now he looked sorry and embarrassed. Marcus slowly reached out and shook Mr. Peterson's hand. The manager's hand was soft and warm. Marcus's hand was rough and cold from living outside. "I am very sorry," Mr. Peterson said again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was wrong about you. That was the most beautiful music I have ever heard in my life." The people in the restaurant were still watching and listening. Many of them looked ashamed too. They had also been ready to laugh at Marcus when he first sat down at the piano. "You said you would give me a meal if I played well," Marcus said quietly. Mr. Peterson nodded quickly. Yes, of course. You can have anything you want from our menu. It's completely free. And I want to apologize to everyone here for the way I treated you." He turned to face the whole restaurant. "Ladies and gentlemen, I made a terrible mistake today. I judged this man by his appearance instead of giving him a fair chance. We have just heard one of the most amazing performances I have ever witnessed." People nodded and murmured their agreement. The elderly music teacher wiped her eyes with her tissue. "That was extraordinary," she said to her husband. "I've never heard Chopin played with such feeling." A young woman at table 6 was looking at her phone. She had been searching the internet during the applause. Suddenly, her eyes got very wide. "Oh my goodness," she whispered to her boyfriend. "I think I know who this is." Her boyfriend leaned over to look at her phone screen. "What do you mean?" "Look at this," she said, showing him an old newspaper article. Marcus Williams. He used to be the main pianist for the Metropolitan Orchestra, but he disappeared 3 years ago after his family died in a car accident. The boyfriend looked at the photo on the phone, then looked at Marcus. "Do you think that's really him?" The young woman stared at Marcus. Under the messy hair and beard, she could see the same face from the newspaper photo. "I'm sure it's him. He was famous. People called him one of the best pianists in the country." At another table, a man named Robert was having the same realization. He loved classical music and had been to many concerts. He remembered reading about Marcus Williams and the terrible tragedy that had happened to his family. Robert stood up and walked slowly toward the piano. Other people watched him, wondering what he was going to do. "Excuse me," Robert said politely to Marcus. "Are you Marcus Williams, the pianist who used to play with the Metropolitan Orchestra?" Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He had hoped no one would recognize him. For 3 years he had been hiding from his old life. He did not want to remember who he used to be. I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said, looking down at the floor. But Robert was sure now. "You are, aren't you? I saw you perform 5 years ago at Lincoln Center. You played this same Chopin piece. It was incredible then, and it's incredible now." Other people in the restaurant started to whisper excitedly. Some of them took out their phones and started searching for information about Marcus Williams. "He's right," said the young woman who had found the first article. "You're Marcus Williams. You're famous." Marcus felt trapped. All these people were staring at him and talking about him. He just wanted to eat some food and leave quietly. "Please," Marcus said softly. "I just want to eat something. I haven't had a real meal in 3 days." Mr. Peterson immediately felt even worse. While everyone was talking about how talented Marcus was still hungry and cold. "Of course," Mr. Peterson said. "Please, sit anywhere you like. I'll bring you our best meal right away." He led Marcus to a quiet table in the corner, away from all the staring people. Marcus sat down gratefully. The chair was soft and comfortable. He had not sat in a real chair in a long time. A server named Jenny brought Marcus a glass of water and some fresh bread. "This is while you wait for your food," she said kindly. "Mr. Peterson is having the chef prepare something special for you." Marcus drank the water slowly. It was clean and cold. The bread was warm and soft. It tasted better than anything he had eaten in months. People in the restaurant kept looking at him, but they were trying to be polite about it. They whispered quietly and pointed carefully. Marcus heard bits of their conversations. "I can't believe a world-class musician was living on the streets. What happened to him? Why did he disappear? That poor man. He must have been through something terrible." The elderly music teacher, Mrs. Anderson, asked her husband if she could go talk to Marcus. Her husband nodded, and she walked slowly to Marcus's table. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I don't want to bother you, but I had to tell you something. I taught piano for 40 years, and I have never heard anyone play with such emotion. Your music made me cry because it was so beautiful." Marcus looked up at her kind face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what brought you to this point in your life," Mrs. Anderson continued, "but I want you to know that your gift is still there. Music like that doesn't come from just knowing how to play piano. It comes from the heart." Marcus felt tears starting in his eyes. He had thought his music was gone forever. He had thought that losing his family had taken away his ability to create beauty. "I lost everything," Marcus whispered to Mrs. Anderson. "My wife and daughter died in a car accident. I couldn't play anymore after that. The music reminded me too much of them." Mrs. Anderson sat down in the chair across from Marcus. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said softly. "I can't imagine how much pain you've been through." "I walked away from everything," Marcus continued. "My job, my house, my entire life. I thought if I stopped playing music, the pain would stop too. But you played today," Mrs. Anderson pointed out. "You made something beautiful today." Marcus nodded slowly. "I was so hungry, I just wanted some food. I didn't expect—" "You didn't expect to feel the music again?" Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I had forgotten how good it felt to play. For a few minutes I felt like myself again." Mr. Peterson arrived at the table carrying a large plate of food. There was roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and fresh rolls. It looked and smelled wonderful. "This is our chef's special meal," Mr. Peterson said, "and please take your time. You can stay here as long as you want." Marcus looked at the food with amazement. He had been dreaming about a meal like this for days. "Thank you," he said. "This is very kind." As Marcus began to eat, word was spreading beyond the restaurant. Some people had posted videos of his performance on social media. Others were sharing the news that Marcus Williams, the missing pianist, had been found. But Marcus didn't know about any of that yet. He was just enjoying the best meal he had eaten in 3 years and remembering what it felt like to make music again. While Marcus ate his meal, the restaurant buzzed with quiet excitement. People were trying to be respectful and not stare too much, but everyone wanted to know more about the mysterious pianist. The young woman who had first recognized Marcus was named Sarah. She worked for a local newspaper and knew a good story when she saw one. She carefully approached Marcus's table where Mrs. Anderson was still sitting with him. "Excuse me," Sarah said politely. "I'm sorry to bother you while you're eating. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm a reporter for the City Herald. I don't want to upset you, but I think people would love to hear your story." Marcus stopped eating and looked up at her nervously. "I don't want to be in the newspaper," he said quickly. "I just want to be left alone." "I understand," Sarah said gently, "but your performance today was something special. People are already talking about it. Some of them are posting videos on social media." Marcus felt worried. He had been hiding for 3 years. He did not want the world to know where he was or what had happened to him. Mrs. Anderson patted Marcus's hand gently. "You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to," she said. "But sometimes sharing our story can help other people who are going through hard times." At a table near the window, an older man in an expensive suit was making phone calls. His name was David Chen, and he was a concert promoter. He had worked with many famous musicians over the years. David had recognized Marcus immediately. 3 years ago, when Marcus disappeared, David had been trying to book him for a special concert series. Marcus had been one of the most promising young pianists in the country. David finished his phone call and walked over to Marcus's table. "Marcus Williams," he said with a warm smile. "I've been looking for you for 3 years." Marcus looked up with surprise and worry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "My name is David Chen. I'm a concert promoter. We were supposed to work together before everything happened. I've been hoping you would come back to music someday." Marcus shook his head. "I can't go back to that life. Too much has happened." David sat down at the table without being invited. He could see that Marcus was scared and fragile. "I'm not asking you to go back to your old life," David said softly. "But I heard you play today. That kind of talent doesn't just disappear. Maybe there's a way to start fresh." Sarah, the reporter, was still standing nearby, listening to the conversation. She was taking notes quietly. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked David. "Small concerts, intimate settings, nothing big or stressful. Just you and a piano and people who want to hear beautiful music." Mrs. Anderson nodded encouragingly. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. You could play when you feel ready without any pressure." Marcus looked around the restaurant. People were still eating and talking, but many of them kept glancing his way. He could see kindness in their faces, but also curiosity. "I lost my family," Marcus said quietly to David. "My wife Emma and my daughter Lily. They died in a car accident while I was away performing. If I hadn't been traveling so much for concerts, maybe I could have saved them." David's face filled with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I heard about the accident. It was a terrible tragedy. I blamed myself," Marcus continued. "I blamed music. I thought if I stopped playing, I could stop remembering them. So I walked away from everything." "But did it work?" Mrs. Anderson asked gently. "Did stopping music make the pain go away?" Marcus thought about this question. "No," he admitted. "The pain was still there. I just felt empty instead. Empty and lost." Sarah, the reporter, had tears in her eyes as she listened. This was not just a news story anymore. This was a human story about love and loss and the power of music. "When you played today," David said, "what did you feel?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I felt them with me again," he whispered. "Emma and Lily. They loved hearing me play. Emma always said that my music made the world more beautiful." "Maybe," Mrs. Anderson said softly. "They would want you to keep making the world more beautiful." At another table, a woman named Dr. Lisa Martinez had been listening to parts of the conversation. She was a psychologist who specialized in helping people deal with grief and trauma. Dr. Martinez approached the table carefully. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. "My name is Dr. Lisa Martinez. I'm a therapist and I work with people who have experienced loss. I don't want to intrude, but I've heard part of your story, and I want you to know that what you're feeling is normal." Marcus looked at her with tired eyes. "Nothing feels normal anymore." "Grief changes us," Dr. Martinez said. "It's like losing a part of ourselves. But healing doesn't mean forgetting the people we love. It means finding ways to carry their love with us as we move forward." "I don't know how to move forward," Marcus said. "Maybe you already started today," Dr. Martinez replied. "When you played that beautiful music, you were honoring your family's memory. You were sharing the gift they love to see you use." David, the concert promoter, leaned forward. "Marcus, I have an idea. What if we started very small? Just one short performance, maybe here in this restaurant. If it feels good, we could try a small concert hall. If it doesn't feel right, we stop. No pressure, no contracts, no commitments. Mr. Peterson, who had been listening from nearby, stepped forward. "You could play here anytime you want," he said. "After what happened today, it would be an honor to have you perform in our restaurant." Marcus looked around at all these faces. A few hours ago, he had been a homeless man begging for food. Now he was surrounded by people who wanted to help him. "I don't have anywhere to live," Marcus said. "I don't have clean clothes or a place to practice piano." David smiled. "Those are problems we can solve. I know people who would be happy to help. The music community has been wondering what happened to you for 3 years. They would welcome you back." Sarah, the reporter, spoke up. "If you let me tell your story, it might inspire other people who are struggling. Sometimes knowing that someone else has been through hard times and survived can give people hope." Marcus felt overwhelmed. Everything was happening so fast. A few hours ago, his biggest worry was finding food. Now people were talking about concerts and interviews and a new life. "I need time to think," Marcus said. "This is all very sudden." "Of course," David said. "Take all the time you need. Here's my business card. Call me if you decide you want to try playing music again." Dr. Martinez also gave Marcus her card. "If you want to talk to someone about your grief and your feelings, I'm here. The first session would be free." Mrs. Anderson patted Marcus's shoulder. "Whatever you decide, remember that you brought joy to a lot of people today. That's a gift. Worth sharing." As the afternoon wore on, Marcus finished his meal slowly. He was not used to eating so much food, and his stomach felt full and satisfied for the first time in months. Outside the restaurant, word was continuing to spread about the homeless man who had played like a master pianist. Videos of his performance were being shared online. People were calling their friends to tell them about what they had witnessed. But inside the restaurant, Marcus was just trying to understand what had happened to him. In one afternoon, his whole world had changed again. The question was, what would he do next? As word spread about Marcus's performance, more people began arriving at the restaurant. They had heard about the homeless man who played piano like a professional, and they wanted to see for themselves. Among the new arrivals was an older woman named Margaret Foster. She had gray hair and kind eyes, and she worked as a music librarian at the city's main library. Margaret had known Marcus during his professional days. When Margaret saw Marcus sitting at the corner table, her hand went to her heart. "Marcus Williams," she whispered to herself. "I can't believe it's really you." Margaret approached the table slowly. Marcus looked up as she came near, but he did not recognize her at first. "Marcus," Margaret said gently. "I'm Margaret Foster. I work at the music library downtown. You used to come in sometimes to study scores and practice pieces." Marcus stared at her for a moment. Then his eyes showed recognition. "Mrs. Foster," he said quietly. "I remember you. You always helped me find the music I needed." Margaret sat down in an empty chair. "I've been wondering what happened to you for 3 years. One day you just stopped coming to the library. Then I heard about your family's accident and you disappeared completely." Marcus looked down at his hands. "I couldn't face anyone from my old life. I couldn't face the music world. Everything reminded me of Emma and Lily." "Tell me about them," Margaret said softly. "I never got to meet your family." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time in 3 years, they were not just tears of sadness. "Emma was a teacher," he said. "She taught 3rd grade, and she loved children so much she had the most beautiful laugh." Margaret nodded encouragingly. "And Lily was 7 years old," Marcus continued. "She was learning to play piano too. She used to sit next to me on the piano bench and try to copy what I was doing. Her little fingers could barely reach the keys, but she was so determined. They sound wonderful," Margaret said. "They were," Marcus whispered. "Emma always came to my concerts. She would sit in the front row and smile at me. And Lily would clap louder than anyone else. She told everyone that her daddy was the best piano player in the world." Sarah, the reporter, who was still nearby, was writing down everything she heard. This was becoming one of the most touching stories she had ever covered. "What happened the night of the accident?" Margaret asked gently. Marcus took a deep breath. "I was performing in Chicago. It was a 3-day festival, and I was the featured soloist. Emma and Lily were supposed to come with me, but Lily got sick with a cold, so they stayed home. He paused, remembering that night. Emma called me after my performance. She said Lily was feeling better and wanted to come see me perform the next night. They were driving to Chicago the next morning. Margaret waited patiently for Marcus to continue. They never made it, Marcus said, his voice breaking. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit their car. They both died instantly. I got the phone call from the police while I was still at the concert hall. The people at nearby tables had stopped talking. They could hear the pain in Marcus's voice, and they felt sorry for him. I flew home immediately. Marcus continued. The funeral was 3 days later. All my music friends came. The orchestra played at the service. But I couldn't listen to the music. It just made everything hurt more. Dr. Martinez, who was still in the restaurant, leaned closer to listen. She understood how traumatic grief could affect people. After the funeral, I went home to our house, Marcus said. But everything there reminded me of them. Emma's coffee cup was still in the sink. Lily's toys were still on the floor. Her little piano books were still on my piano. Margaret wiped tears from her eyes. I tried to play piano once, Marcus continued. I sat down at our piano and tried to play something simple, but all I could think about was Lily sitting next to me, trying to play along. I couldn't do it. What did you do then? Margaret asked. I left, Marcus said simply. I packed one small bag and left everything else. The house, the piano, my career, all my music. I just started walking and never went back. David, the concert promoter who had been listening, shook his head sadly. The music world lost one of its brightest stars that day. But you've been surviving on the streets for 3 years, Mrs. Anderson said. That must have been so difficult. Marcus nodded. It was hard. I learned to sleep in doorways and under bridges. I learned which restaurants threw away good food. At the end of the day, I learned how to stay warm in winter. Weren't you recognized? Sarah asked. You were famous. I changed, Marcus explained. I grew a beard and let my hair get long. I lost weight. I wore old clothes. Most people who knew me wouldn't have recognized me, and I stayed away from places where music people might go. Margaret looked at Marcus, carefully. Under the messy hair and beard, she could still see the talented young man she had known. But his eyes looked older now, sadder. What made you decide to ask to play piano today? Margaret asked. Marcus thought about this. I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I saw the piano through the window, and for a moment, I forgot about being afraid. I just remembered that I used to be able to play piano, and maybe someone would give me food for it. But you played Chopin's ballad, David pointed out. That's not something you play if you haven't practiced in 3 years. How did you remember it so perfectly? Marcus smiled slightly for the first time all day. Emma loved that piece. I played it for her on our first date. I played it at our wedding. I played it for Lily when she was a baby and couldn't sleep. I could never forget that piece. Dr. Martinez spoke up. Marcus, do you think Emma and Lily would want you to stop playing music forever? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Emma always said that my music was a gift I was supposed to share with the world. She said it made people happy. And Lily? Dr. Martinez asked. Lily wanted to be a pianist like me when she grew up, Marcus said softly. She said we would play duets together when she got older. Margaret reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. Maybe the best way to honor their memory is to keep sharing your gift. Maybe your music can help other people deal with their own sadness. Marcus looked around at all the faces watching him. These people had started as strangers who were ready to laugh at him. Now they were listening to his story with kindness and understanding. I don't know if I can go back to the concert stage, Marcus said. That world seems so far away now. You don't have to go back to your old life, David said, but maybe you can build a new life that includes music in a different way. Outside the restaurant, a small crowd had gathered. People had heard about the amazing performance and wanted to see if the pianist was still there. Some of them had brought their children, hoping to hear some music. Mr. Peterson noticed the crowd and came over to Marcus's table. There are people outside who would love to hear you play again, he said. But only if you want to, no pressure. Marcus looked toward the window and saw the faces of families and children pressed against the glass. Some of them were holding signs that said, "Thank you for the beautiful music and please play again." "They're not here to make fun of me?" Marcus asked. "No," Mr. Peterson said. "They're here because your music touched their hearts. Word has spread all over the neighborhood about what happened here today." Marcus stood up slowly and walked to the piano. He sat down on the bench and looked at the keys. Then he looked out at all the people in the restaurant and the people outside. "This one is for Emma and Lily," he said quietly. Then he began to play The Swan by Saint-Saëns, one of the most beautiful and gentle pieces ever written for piano. As the music filled the air again, Marcus realized something important. His music had not died with his family. It was still alive inside him, ready to bring comfort and joy to other people. Maybe that was how he could keep Emma and Lily's love alive too. The gentle music of The Swan floated through the restaurant and somehow seemed to reach the people standing outside as well. Children pressed their faces against the windows, watching Marcus's fingers move across the keys with wonder. As Marcus played, he felt something changing inside him. The music was not bringing back painful memories this time. Instead, it was bringing back good memories. He remembered Emma humming along to this piece while she cooked dinner. He remembered Lily asking him to play the pretty swan song before bedtime. When the last note faded away, the applause was even stronger than before. People outside were clapping too, even though they could barely hear the music through the glass. A woman near the back of the restaurant stood up. She was well-dressed and had been sitting quietly by herself during both performances. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Chen, and she was one of the most respected classical music promoters in the country. Dr. Chen had been eating lunch when Marcus first started playing. She had immediately recognized his extraordinary talent, and during his second performance, she had been making phone calls to colleagues and friends in the music industry. Dr. Chen walked slowly toward the piano. Marcus was still sitting on the bench, looking tired but more peaceful than he had seemed earlier. "Mr. Williams," Dr. Chen said in a warm voice. "My name is Dr. Elizabeth Chen. I work with classical musicians and concert organizations around the world." Marcus looked up at her nervously. Another person from the music industry. He wasn't sure he was ready for this. "I've been looking for you for 3 years," Dr. Chen continued. "Not just me, but many people in the classical music community. When you disappeared, we all hoped you would return someday." "I'm not the same person I was before," Marcus said quietly. "No," Dr. Chen agreed. "You're not. Your playing today has a depth and emotion that it didn't have before. Your pain has made your music even more beautiful, if that's possible." Dr. Chen sat down on a chair next to the piano. "I want to offer you something, but I need you to listen with an open mind." Marcus nodded cautiously. "I run a program called Music for Healing," Dr. Chen explained. "We organize small concerts in hospitals, nursing homes, community centers, and other places where people need comfort and hope. The musicians who participate say it helps them heal too." "I don't think I'm ready for public concerts," Marcus said. "These aren't public concerts," Dr. Chen said. "They're intimate gatherings, maybe 20 or 30 people at most. People who are going through difficult times just like you have been." Marcus thought about this. It sounded different from the big concert halls and fancy audiences he used to perform for. "You could start very small," Dr. Chen continued. "Maybe one short performance a month. If it feels good, you could do more. If it doesn't feel right, you could stop any time." David, the concert promoter who had been listening, nodded enthusiastically. "That sounds perfect, Marcus. No pressure, no stress, just sharing music with people who need it." Dr. Martinez, the therapist, spoke up as well. "Sometimes helping other people can be part of our own healing process. When we use our gifts to comfort others, it can help us find purpose again." Marcus looked around at all the encouraging faces. These people seemed to genuinely care about helping him, not just using his talent for their own benefit. "What kind of places?" Marcus asked. "Well," Dr. Chen said, "next week I'm organizing a small concert at a children's hospital. The young patients there don't get many visitors, and music always brightens their day. The week after that, there's a senior center where many of the residents are lonely. Marcus thought about children in the hospital. Some of them were probably the same age Lily had been. The idea scared him, but it also touched his heart. I don't have anywhere to live, Marcus reminded everyone. I don't have clean clothes or a way to practice piano. Dr. Chen smiled. Those are problems with solutions. I know a nice boarding house where several musicians stay when they're in town. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, loves classical music. I'm sure she would let you stay there. Margaret, the librarian, raised her hand. And you could practice at the library anytime you want. We have a beautiful piano in our community room. Mr. Peterson stepped forward as well. You're welcome to practice here too during our quiet hours in the afternoon. It would be an honor. Marcus felt overwhelmed by all the kindness. 3 years of living on the streets had made him forget that good people existed. Today he was remembering. What about clothes? Marcus asked. David grinned. I know several musicians who are about your size. They would be happy to share some nice clothes with you. Sarah, the reporter, had been writing everything down. Mr. Williams, if you're willing, I'd like to write about your story. But I would focus on hope and healing, not just the tragedy. I think it could inspire people. Marcus considered this. Would you write about Emma and Lily too? I want people to know how wonderful they were. Of course, Sarah said. Their love for you and your music should be part of the story. Dr. Chen pulled out her phone and showed Marcus some photos from previous Music for Healing concerts. There were pictures of elderly people smiling while listening to violin music, children clapping for a young pianist, and families hugging musicians after performances. Look at their faces, Dr. Chen said. These people aren't thinking about technical perfection or music critics. They're just enjoying the beauty and comfort that music brings. Marcus studied the photos. The audiences looked grateful and happy. They reminded him of how Emma and Lily used to look when he played for them at home. Could I play some of the pieces that Emma and Lily loved? Marcus asked. You can play whatever feels right to you, Dr. Chen assured him. The goal is to share joy and comfort, not to impress anyone. Mrs. Anderson, the retired piano teacher, patted Marcus's shoulder. I think this could be exactly what you need. You can share your gift without the pressure of your old career. Marcus looked out the window at the people who were still gathered, outside. Some of them had brought flowers and small gifts, which they had left by the restaurant door. A little girl was holding a drawing she had made of a piano. When would I start? Marcus asked. Whenever you feel ready, Dr. Chen said. But the Children's Hospital concert is next Wednesday. If you wanted to join us, it would be wonderful. If not, we can wait. Marcus thought about children in hospital beds feeling scared and lonely. Maybe his music could help them feel better, the way it used to help Lily feel better when she was sick. I think, Marcus said slowly, I think Emma and Lily would want me to play for those children. Dr. Chen smiled widely. Does that mean you'll do it? Marcus took a deep breath. Yes. I'll try the Children's Hospital concert, just to see how it feels. The people in the restaurant broke into applause again. This time they were not just clapping for his music. They were clapping for his courage to try again. There's one more thing, Dr. Chen said. The boarding house has a piano in the common room. Mrs. Patterson encourages her residents to practice there. You could have a place to play music every day if you wanted. Marcus smiled slightly. For the first time in 3 years, he was thinking about tomorrow with hope instead of fear. Maybe his story wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning a new chapter. 3 months had passed since that life-changing day at the restaurant. Marcus stood in front of a mirror in his small but comfortable room at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. He looked very different now. His hair was clean and neatly cut. His beard was trimmed and tidy. He wore a simple but nice black suit that David had given him. His hands, which had been rough and dirty from living on the streets, were now clean and soft from playing piano every day. But the biggest change was in his eyes. They still held sadness for Emma and Lily, but they also held something new. Hope. Today was a special day. Marcus was going to perform at the Community Arts Center for an audience that included many of the people who had helped him start his new life. It was his biggest performance since returning to music. Marcus walked downstairs to the common room where Mrs. Patterson was waiting for him. She was a kind woman in her 70s who loved having musicians stay in her boarding house. "You look wonderful, dear," Mrs. Patterson said with a warm smile. "Are you nervous?" "A little," Marcus admitted. "But it's a good kind of nervous. It's the feeling I used to have before concerts, when I was excited to share music with people." Mrs. Patterson had become like a grandmother to Marcus. She made sure he ate healthy meals and had clean clothes. She also listened when he talked about Emma and Lily, never making him feel like he should get over his grief. "They would be so proud of you," Mrs. Patterson said, knowing exactly who Marcus was thinking about. Marcus nodded. Over the past 3 months, he had learned that healing didn't mean forgetting Emma and Lily. It meant carrying their love with him as he moved forward with his life. Dr. Chen arrived to pick up Marcus and drive him to the concert hall. She had become not just his promoter, but also a good friend. She understood that Marcus needed to rebuild his life slowly and carefully. "Ready for tonight?" Dr. Chen asked as Marcus got into her car. "I think so," Marcus said. "The program includes some of Emma and Lily's favorite pieces. I want to play them as a way of honoring their memory." During the past 3 months, Marcus had performed in 12 different locations through the Music for Healing program. He had played for children in the hospital, elderly people in nursing homes, families at community centers, and people at a homeless shelter. Each performance had helped him heal a little more. He discovered that his music could bring comfort to people who were sad, hope to people who were struggling, and joy to people who needed something beautiful in their lives. The children at the hospital had been especially meaningful to him. Some of them reminded him of Lily with their curiosity and enthusiasm. When he played for them, he felt like he was playing for his daughter too. One little girl named Amy had asked him to play the Pretty Swan song, just like Lily used to do. Marcus had played the swan for Amy every time he visited the hospital, and it always made her smile during her cancer treatments. When they arrived at the Community Arts Center, Marcus was surprised to see a small crowd of people waiting outside. These were not strangers coming to a regular concert. These were people whose lives Marcus had touched over the past 3 months. Amy from the hospital was there with her parents. She was feeling much better and was excited to hear Marcus play again. Mrs. Anderson, the retired piano teacher, was there with her husband. Margaret from the library had come with several other music lovers. Mr. Peterson from the restaurant was there too, along with several of his employees who had witnessed Marcus's first performance. Sarah the reporter had written a beautiful article about Marcus's story, and many people had read it and wanted to support his return to music. Even some residents from the homeless shelter where Marcus had performed were there. They had dressed in their best clothes for the occasion. Marcus felt overwhelmed by all the familiar faces. These people had become his new community, his new family, in a way. Inside the concert hall, Marcus saw that Dr. Martinez, the therapist, was there along with David, the concert promoter, and dozens of other people who had somehow been touched by his story. The concert hall was small and intimate, holding only about 200 people. It was completely full, but it didn't feel overwhelming like the big concert halls Marcus used to play in. It felt warm and welcoming. Marcus walked onto the stage and sat down at the piano. He looked out at the audience and saw faces filled with love and support. These people were not here to judge his technical skill. They were here because his music had brought something meaningful to their lives. "Good evening," Marcus said into the microphone. 3 months ago, I was a homeless man who thought his life was over. Tonight, I'm here because of the kindness of many people in this audience. You taught me that music is not just about performing. It's about connecting with other people and sharing something beautiful together. The audience applauded warmly. "Tonight, I want to play some music that was special to my wife Emma and my daughter Lily," Marcus continued. "They are not here with me physically, but their love is still part of every note I play." Marcus began with For Elise, the first piece he had played at the restaurant, but now it sounded different. It was no longer just a simple song. It was filled with all the experiences and emotions of the past 3 months. He followed it with The Swan, thinking of Amy and all the children he had played for. Then he played Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece that had changed everything that day at the restaurant. As he played, Marcus felt Emma and Lily's presence with him. Not in a sad way, but in a comforting way. He realized that they had never really left him. Their love had been inside his music all along. The audience listened in complete silence, many of them crying tears of joy and gratitude. This was more than a concert. It was a celebration of healing, hope, and the power of music to transform lives. When Marcus finished the last piece, the entire audience stood up and applauded for several minutes. But this was different from the applause at his old concerts. This applause came from the heart. Amy from the hospital ran up to the stage with a drawing she had made. It showed Marcus at the piano with angels watching over him. "The angels are your family," she explained. "They're always with you when you play." Marcus hugged the little girl and felt tears of happiness on his cheeks. He had thought that losing Emma and Lily meant losing everything. But he had learned that love never really dies. It just changes form. After the concert, people came up to thank Marcus and share their own stories. A man said that Marcus's music had helped him through his divorce. A woman said it had comforted her during her mother's illness. A teenager said it had inspired her to start learning piano. Dr. Chen approached Marcus with a big smile. "There are requests coming in from all over the country," she said. "People want you to bring the Music for Healing program to their communities." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I think I'd like that, but I want to keep it small and personal. That's where the real healing happens." As Marcus left the concert hall that night, he looked up at the stars. He felt like Emma and Lily were smiling down at him. He had finally found a way to honor their memory while building a new life for himself. Marcus Williams was no longer a homeless man asking for food. He was no longer the famous concert pianist he had been before. He was something new, a musician who used his gift to heal hearts, including his own. The next morning, Marcus would wake up in his comfortable room, eat breakfast with Mrs. Patterson, practice piano at the library, and plan his next Music for Healing concert. He had a purpose again, a reason to get up each day and share his gift with the world. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most broken hearts. Marcus had learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means finding a way to let love and hope grow from the pain. And every time he sat down at a piano, Marcus knew that Emma and Lily were listening, proud of the man he had become, and the music he continued to share with a world that needed more beauty, more hope, and more healing.